Yes, welcome back. Good to have you all back here on Ashram Hours. We've got a smooth stream for you today. Tried, tested, and true. Sorry about the mix-up last time. We had a little bit of a blip on the Wi-Fi, but we are back. And we've got Albert from GenLayer here today. Going to go over all the things to do with you, sir, and your project. And we just announced our first campaign on Rally, which is going live today, is now live. The waitlist has been live for about 5 days. We'll get into all that and the rest. So stay tuned and be amazed. How are you guys doing today? I know, Sid, I'm going to just bait you out right now. You're running a fever, dude. So thank you for being here. It's not easy to do anything when you have an actual fever. You are over 98 degrees. How are you feeling?
In a way, it's kind of fun. It's like the veil is thin. You're a little delusional, a little demented. I find a way to enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting conversation on its own.
How are you doing today, Albert?
I'm good. Yeah, lots going on. Juggling all the different balls, and it's pretty busy right now. But yeah, I can't complain. Yeah, thanks for having me here. Really appreciate it. I love that. I love what you guys are building. I've been following for a while. I mean, I've known RT for years now, and like just he always talks about Nirvana and like what you guys are doing. I think it's great. Yeah, very excited.
Yeah, we were talking off camera beforehand that you had cooked up a similar idea to Nirvana a few years ago. The same intuitions about what if we vertically integrated, the exchange, the token itself, so you don't need to have these external market makers, and you can use that exchange to boost the inherent value, the inherent liquidity of a token.
Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense. So like back then it was back in Radix, right? So Radix was this L1 as well. Is this L1? Like, we're trying to do, we want to do a stable coin that really like is fundamental into the protocol, right? And so getting the, the rising floor and like getting a similar dynamic to Nirvana's really, I think it was, I really love the idea. I was really fascinated by that. We did publish the paper. It's just like, there's a lot of concepts that I think Nirvana adds on top of that, earlier concept, right? That I think make a ton of sense. So yeah, I really like it. I mean, I've been participating for, now quite a few months actually, like 6 to 9 months or something like this. I don't know. Time is a bit,
January. I think I dropped my first novel in our chat in January.
So
yeah, late Jan.
Okay, that's been a while.
Yeah, stablecoin with upside is kind of the base, like bottom, like that's like your worst case. You're kind of like, okay, well, it's going to be at least this or more. So I'm going to tell you, or honestly, I don't really have to tell anybody watching. Everybody watching here, is hooked. They're interested. That's why they're watching. But we want to learn about you today. You mentioned Radix. What was that your first project? Did you start your engineering stuff?
No, I got into crypto in 2013. Like before that, I had done a couple other things, like a small algorithmic traded fund, and then a bunch of like smaller startups. Fell in love into Bitcoin, then Ethereum. I did a consulting firm trying to sell Solidity smart contracts. And then eventually I had the idea that, like we needed to have something more easy to use than Ethereum, right? I would like to have an API that you can go and essentially mint a new token, right? So with that simple idea and trying to essentially have like simple rules for that, there was this project that I joined early on. I was one of the co-founders of the NEM Foundation. NEM was this L1, got to like, 20 billion or something in coin market cap, like in FDB. So
I remember NEM. NEM was top 10 at one point, wasn't it?
Yeah, even
2017.
Yeah. Like 20.
When I got in, I think coming into end of 2017, it was top 10, top 15 at least.
That was very crazy.
Yeah.
But it was like 150 people in the foundation, something like this. Like 24 billion market cap. So even now, that's really high. Mm-hmm. It was very Asia focused as well. Like the idea was simple, right? Like you have an API, you just call this API to mint a token, right? And at that point, like Ethereum didn't have anything like the current, RPC system. Like the thing right now is much better. NEM was really an innovation on that front. But then because of the size that NEM was getting, like the politics inside was crazy, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't feel too comfortable to share, like, depending on what the things in there, but basically it got to the point where, like a lot of politics, and I just got tired of that. So I decided to leave and join another project called Radix, which is an L1 that was also focused on essentially scalability. And my idea of having these, creating these tokens through an API and then having certain rules, it's something that they loved. So I joined Radix as the chief product officer, spent there about 3 years trying to essentially, create the different aspects, right? So, from the stablecoin to all the libraries, wallets, and, the Radix engine, which eventually, is what more or less is being used right now, right? So yeah, I'm fascinated by this. I mean, to me, it's like, you have systems of tokens of trade, and like we're just trying to make them be able to do more. And like, yeah, I don't know. That's why I'm here, really, like just to see it thrive and to do more. Like, investments aside, I think it's. I'm actually here for the tech.
Yeah, it's not a meme. It's not a meme in our chat. We got the boomer uncle chat going on for the last 5 years, and we like to joke about that, but it's for real.
Yeah, I don't know.
The tech is going to win out. I'm still holding that flag. I'm like, the tech is going to win out in the end.
I think it matters. I don't know. Like, I feel like there's this suspension of disbelief where people don't care about decentralization anymore. Where I think like it's just okay. We're just here to make a quick buck, right? And I mean, I can tell you a bit more about that. Like, to me, it's like over the last few years there have been a very limited amount of innovations, right? Like fundamental protocols. I actually think that Nirvana is a fundamental protocol. And like, here's a new building block for the decentralized, future, right? Like this type of stablecoin or this type of like system is important, is a necessary building block for the future. The problem is that now, like, we're working on this, limitations that smart contracts give you, right? I mean, we don't need to get into GenLayer yet, but basically, yeah, I'm here because I think that we need this decentralization. It opens up tons of things. I mean, we haven't really seen many, AMMs being, broken. Well, we've seen a lot of exchanges or, centralized bridges being broken. Yes, hacked. I think that it's already being proven that DeFi works really well, right? Now, where we are right now is that people want to make quick money. And right now it's easier to make, easy money with meme coins. Well, arguably, right? Meme coins and, essentially slot machines in a way, right? So people want to gamble. And for the last few years, it's really been about the gamble more than the actual innovation and the actual technology that's being built and the implications of it, right? Yeah.
I think it's kind of exciting to think about how early we are on the tech front. You still use things like any live blockchain right now, and there are just severe limitations one way or another, and you probably know more about them than I do. But when I talk to any engineer or builder in the space, and they're all building something that's going to optimize for what we have, it is incredibly early, and it's hard to think about being early when you think about something like Bitcoin. You say, wow, it could have been earlier, but it's like 95% of people don't own Bitcoin, so you're still early, even though it's 110K or whatever. But in the tech cycle, it feels incredibly early, because try to go tell some person who's never touched crypto to like get involved in one of these newer things, and it's a very long conversation about, you set up the wallet, then you got to go to an exchange, you got to set up an exchange account, you got to connect your bank account, you got to send some money. Like, none of it's easy, even though it's a lot easier. I still remember like Ether Delta back in 2017, and you had to just like you're sitting there and like Uniswap 1.0, and it was horrible. And so we've come a long way, but I'd say I feel like we're maybe 12% of the way there.
It's interesting, right? So like, okay, if you want to break it up, first, I think that user experience definitely has gotten way better. Still lots of way to go. I think Privy is amazing, and I think like there's actually quite a interesting innovations on the user experience side of things, right? So to me, like I think we're gonna get there relatively soon. From Robinhood to all the banks already like opening the doors to anyone, right? So I think that's quite interesting. I think on the technology side of things, and like we can talk about that later, but basically I think that there has been some fundamental limitations on what you can do on a blockchain until right now. At the end of the day, you're isolated from the outside world, right? Because blockchains are kind of like a ledger, right? So you have a ledger, you can put contracts on it, but the assets moving have to be on the ledger, right? So there's only like limited amount of things that you can do. and it's, it's complex, right? Like the moment that you want to do a DeFi protocol, first thing you need to do is get a lawyer, right? So it's just like the infrastructure in order to do anything, it's really expensive and
cumbersome.
Yeah. It's not easy to do. And then, at the end of the day, like there's I think a limited amount of things that you can do within a single ledger, right? So that's, I feel like my perception is that, it's been a while that, like we need kind of new things. On the market, my take has always been kind of the .com bubble, the Nasdaq, the total market cap of Nasdaq was, I think, $7 trillion on the .com bubble. That's what, 20 years ago, right? So if you adjust that to inflation, you're talking 12 trillion, something like this, right? So we're talking that we're at 1/3 of the size of the .com bubble, right? And that's basically the highest we've ever been. Most of it is, a big chunk of it is stable coins, and a big chunk of it is fake money, like not even, like just small meme coins that just have,
and leverage. We found out last week how quickly things disappear when you take the leverage out of play, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think we definitely are early, like just numerically speaking, right? Like we're at $4 trillion when, the .com bubble, and that was, not a global experience, right? Like crypto is a global thing, right? But like, Chinese people couldn't invest on Nasdaq back in the .com bubble, right? Because that was a US thing, right? And so, yeah, I think it's early. It's just we live in this world of social media and like things moving so quickly and information just moving incredibly fast, right? So everything looks like, okay, we need to be reached today instead of like, waiting. Really, it's been what, like 10, 11 years now since Ethereum was created, right? So like it's now the moment to really
close. CZ made a tweet last night. That dude is making his rounds right now. He is back in the spotlight, and he did a quick interview clip that I saw from Thread Guy talking about he made his first million when he was 38, 39, just before he founded Binance. But meanwhile, right now, like you said, social media, it's like, I'm 22. I've only made 200K. I'm not going to make it. Like, fuck, And so it really is a zoom out moment, and it's pretty cliche to say, but time in the market matters. And most people that are in crypto, I think, joined 2021 or later. So it's still early. And that's again, that go back to what I started with, which is like, I just find that exciting. I find it fascinating. I love being here. I don't get any sense, it's tiring. It's been a tough cycle for people who are expecting like another free ride bubble kind of thing like we had in 2021, which people complained wasn't as good as 2017. Like it is thinning out, it's spreading out. There's horizontal dilution. There's way more things to put money into and way less money coming in relative to that. And the money that's coming in is coming in through ETFs, a lot of it, and focused heavily on Bitcoin and ETH. But I think that's going to change. At some point, the horizontal dilution just has to, I don't know. I still feel like this meta of like, let's create a new thing. I mean, shiny new toys will always exist, but this idea will. I guess what I'm saying is I think the money will flow back into the tech, the really strong tech, the things that are solving real problems, making things easier in life. Eventually, funds and long-term stuff will consolidate to that.
I mean, the liquidity has left the market for a few years right now. Yeah. And like maybe that will change now, I think. When that happens, I think it's just a game of liquidity. And so, yeah, it's been a tough, cycle because liquidity has not been here at all, right? That wasn't the case before.
Yeah, we only just started cutting rates, right? Like a month ago. So,
yeah. So
I think what's throwing everyone for a loop right now is that it is October 2025. We're supposed to be at the top. We're supposed to be at the end of something. And it really feels like it just got started. And that's pretty dangerous thinking. Most traders will tell you, they'll be like, this time's different. Next year is going to be a bull market. But I don't know. I really don't know. I won't claim to say it's for sure the top, it's for sure this. But it is different. It is different. This whole cycle has played out differently.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure what a few of us probably had this alarm for the 1068 days or something. Yeah. And I don't know. I know that I skipped mine, so I was a bad boy.
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to play out in a way that hurts the most people, as it often does, right? Everyone's going to look left when they should look right and catch you off guard. So I think doing less at this point, if you're in good positions, is not the end of the world. Anyhow, so tell us about GenLayer. What was the big aha moment you had? You're looking at smart contracts. You've obviously built in the space a long time, looking to improve Ethereum, the whole user experience. What brought you to GenLayer?
So when at Radix, we were looking into different products, right? So like my co-founder and I, Edgar's, we were essentially like doing different product design sprints and like trying to understand what you could do, right? And we came up with this idea for liquid staking, yeah. So we saw, okay, like Radix is a proof of stake protocol, right, from NEM, which is also proof of stake protocol of sorts. What can we do with this? Invented kind of liquid staking, went really quickly to market. Pretty quickly means like in a month or something like this, we had the first liquid stake token. It was before Lido, like quite a bit. Raised a bit of money, got to $350 million in AUM in about 5 months, right? So like it really, really exploded. We were trying to do it more institutionally, and then one day, the custody solution that we're using essentially calls me middle of the night and says, two keys have been lost, and 50% of the assets have disappeared, right?
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, that was not really fun. It's something that's still kind of ongoing, and it's complex. But what we discovered is that basically like the legal system is kind of broken, right? It's like we always talk about the banking system because we're very used to transacting money and how slow it is and how inefficient it is. But if you think about the legal system, what you realize is that 5 billion people don't have access to the justice system, to the judicial system, right? And that's a huge problem. There's like $2.5 trillion of trade finance that really cannot happen just because of different inefficiencies. There's a lot of things that right now, if you think about the US, right, if I sue you, you're already thinking, damn it, now I need to spend probably like tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars just to defend myself, or I didn't even tell you what I sued you for.
You can bankrupt people.
So there's trolls doing this. There's going to be tons of AIs doing this, right? Like what I see as well is that we're in this world of AI right now. I think it's pretty obvious to everybody. And this is going to be definitely changing how we all interact with each other, right? So if the legal system is already not working, which we saw because of this, series of litigations, like spending millions of dollars, waiting for years to get something resolved, right? Now, I understand that that's not something that people like touch every single day, right? Disputes of this type of size. But those are really happening every single day. There's a huge market, right? And so from there, like looking into a different thing, because like also it was around the same time where ChatGPT came out, right? And we started looking into different ways to do like frameworks for agents, right? So we did a small like Cloud Code in a way, like GPT-3, right? And then we did a multi-agent framework. But then what we saw as well is that it's pretty hard to build something that retains a moat. In this world of AI, AIs will be writing code. So if what you're doing is just code, you're not going to have a moat. Yes. And we spend a lot of cycles thinking, okay, what really gives you a moat and what really gives you something that, well, I think that one of the main things is you need to have a network effect. That's a type of moat. And the other thing is that one thing that anyone cannot really fake is trust. Yes. And really like blockchains are trust systems, right? So like Bitcoin is trustless money, right? Like gives you you're trusting Bitcoin network in order to transfer money, right? Ethereum is trustless applications, right? But then if you think into how are real contracts in the real world really working, you normally are trusting the legal system that allows them to be function, right? Without trust, there's no commerce. And right now the trust is based on the legal systems that we are using, which right now are completely fragmented, right? So U.S. legal system and Chinese or Spain legal system, totally isolated, totally fragmented, really, really inefficient. And so what we came up with the idea is, look, the problem is that in this world of AI, how is trust going to work? Like you will have your own agent that you will be asking for it to be making money. I will have my own agent that will want to get some service from your agent, right? How are they going to be trusting each other, right? Your agent, maybe there's a reputation system. Some people are trying to do that, right? So Coinbase and Google and a bunch of other people are trying to do reputation systems, right? Like the agent to agent framework, right? Or the 8004, ERC 8004. Those are reputation systems. You also have centralized systems, such as the one that OpenAI is trying to do with Stripe, right? To enable payments even between them. The problem here is that the actual underlying legal system that allows for that is not actually going to be enough, because the problem is that it's already saturated with 8 billion humans. How is it going to go with 100 billion entities, right? That are just like suing each other just for fun for a smaller amount, and like just every like super fast volume, smaller amount. Yeah. How is it going to work there? And it's interesting because really, like, blockchain should be a solution to this, right? Like, you have self-enforcing contracts that are operating globally that anybody can permissionlessly deploy and use. So blockchain should be the solution to that. It's a very clear one, right? Like something like Uniswap or Nirvana. Yes, anybody can use it from anywhere in the world. And that's the beauty of it, right? Like, you don't have to be asking for anyone's permission to use Nirvana, right? It's open, yes? And that obviously opens the market in a way that nothing else allows to do that, right? That is what allows for new type of, products, and new type of composability of these different products, these building blocks, right? And so to me, that is what is really exciting about DeFi. The problem is that, well, blockchains have been quite limited in what they can do, right? So blockchains right now have a couple, nuances, right? One of them is that they're ledgers that are isolated from the outside world, right? So right now, thanks to something like Layer 0, you can connect from one ledger to another ledger, right? That's neat. But what you're doing is basically expanding the size of the ledger. It's still just ledgers, yes? When you're trying to go to the internet, for example, right now, the only way to do that is through, oracles, right? So like trusting an external party to essentially go and fetch some information and reach an agreement. Because, maybe I don't want to get too technical, I guess, but the problem is that, well, the internet is non-deterministic, right? Like every time that you go fetch a website, you get a different website. And so for Ethereum to be able to go to the internet, it's not possible, because every one of the validators in the Ethereum network would need to get the same website back when they do a query. Yes, this is the reason why we have oracles, right? I don't know that it's obvious to everybody, right? But like, why do we need oracles? Well, because you need a way to agree a deterministic network, right? So you have all the networks in the Ethereum network, all the nodes in the Ethereum network that need to agree on something. And the problem is that the internet, any website that you go to, well, the cookie has changed, the timestamp, the advertisement has changed, yes? They all need to see the same, and they cannot see the same. And that's why Ethereum cannot go to the internet. Ethereum smart contracts cannot go to the internet, yes? Another type of like limitation that smart contracts have. Does that make sense so far?
No, it does. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. That a fact, like the price of tea in China, is not something that can be validated with a cryptographic proof, the way that a state transition can be on a virtual machine.
Exactly.
So the fact that, yes, a blockchain is an isolated database that only knows what it knows. If you're going to import in external facts, at some point, at that point, trust has contaminated your trustless system. You just have to trust this attestation that the price of tea in China is $7 a pound.
Exactly. And there's many different approaches to do that, right? So like Chainlink, for example, has a bunch of different, a bit more reduced number of validators that can go and essentially see that there's not a big delta between them, right? You can do like different type of like ZK proofs, right? So like ZK TLS, right? There's a lot of different approaches to this. But the thing as well is that there's another limitation to smart contracts, which is kind of mind-blowing, right? Which is, why can smart contracts only deal with code? So like judges understand natural language. Yes, you go to a human judge, it understands natural language. And if you think about all the contracts that you see in the real world, these contracts normally are, hundreds of pages, right? The good ones, yes.
And they're written in hideous legalese that no one understands except lawyers. Yeah.
Everybody hates it. I hate it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it's because natural language is ambiguous. But it's not because they want to do like that. They could also write it in code, right? It's just because the real world is not black and white, right? So there's a lot of things that you have in a lot of deals, contracts that you have in the real world that you could not codify, because you cannot think about all the different scenarios. Oh, somebody will lose the keys, whatever. Let's not get into that, right? So maybe there's some things that are not so clear as to codify, and when that happens, well, the smart contract wouldn't be able to function, right? There's this common sense that a judge would be bringing into the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the cool thing here is that, well, now we have common sense machines, right? Which are these AIs, right? These large language models, right? And so far, all blockchains have been focused on having these deterministic systems, right? For those that don't understand the word, means given an input, you get the same output, right? That's a deterministic system, right? So like 2 + 2 = 4, yes, and it doesn't matter how many different types of 2s you put, it will be 4, right? So it always be the same. Now, what we're doing is essentially using AI in a new type of architecture, right? Where essentially you can think about it as a voting system between AI models run by different people to enable trustless decision making, right? So as I said before, like Bitcoin trustless money, Ethereum trustless applications, what GenLayer is a trustless decision making protocol. It's like when you don't want anyone to make a decision, you could go to a judge. It will be very expensive, very slow.
2 years.
You could go to a smart contract. It will only be able to deal with code and isolate it from the outside world in a way. Or you can go to GenLayer, which essentially enables this new type of fuzzy contracts, right? We call them intelligent contracts, right? You can write them in natural language, or you can write them in code. Yes, they can natively go to the internet, because at the end of the day, each validator is going to fetch some information, downloading that information, evaluating it, and then voting between them, right? It's like Kleros, but with AI, or like UMA, but with AI. And instead of waiting for days for a decision, it's happening in seconds or minutes, right? And instead of just being just the AI, like, it essentially has a state, right? It essentially, you can code a contract, you can deploy the contract, and then it will remember things that are happening in the contract, but you essentially get the resolution of the contract in real time, like you do on a smart contract, but also being able to understand natural language, even understand images, right? So you basically have, like, let's say that the consensus is basically there's a transaction that comes in, right? From 1,000 validators, 5 of them are selected at random. 1 is a leader. Think about the president, right? The leader does something, goes to the internet, goes to an LLM, whatever, comes back with a proposal, and then other 4 plus itself, 5, vote on that proposal after also doing something else, like going to the internet, going to an LLM. So this is a non-deterministic decision that they're making that is being bridged into a deterministic system, which is this voting mechanism. Yes, and so if the majority of them disagree, they rotate the leader. If they agree, they essentially accept the transaction, and then there's an appeal system that allows you to double the validator set. So it's like, I know that I'm going a bit deep, so I'm afraid of that, but yeah.
No, I'm with you, dude.
Let me
4 to 5.
Recapitulate that back. That there is some serendipity to what we're talking about recently in the news with that liquidity crisis event where many assets took a 70% drawdown only to spring back up again. Was met with a response of, we need some common sense about this. One of the culprits of this was that a stable coin, one produced by Athena, for instance, is used as a collateral on an exchange, Binance, because we're talking about CZ. I'm sure this happened elsewhere too. The price went down on the exchange because the books pushed the price down. All the while, this token was still worth $1. It wasn't worth $1 within the perspective of the exchange, but it was, come on, it was worth $1. The redemption mechanisms were still supporting its true value. And then in hindsight, Binance paid out a form of restitutions, hundreds of millions of dollars to users that were wrongfully liquidated, margin called, because of this errant depeg of this dollar-backed coin, crypto-backed, but you get the point.
Yeah.
And I know this isn't the case of a blockchain or a smart contract. It's a centralized exchange, but the problem still fits that, the algorithm was functioning correctly. The code wasn't buggy, technically, but there just wasn't common sense at play. So to your point that life is actually complicated, and you can work for years on a product trying to craft an ideal algorithm but some kind of intervention of judgment is required from time to time when you get punched in the face by an edge case that was not anticipated, but obviously is wrong, as was the case with all of these liquidations on those exchanges. So yeah, I'm totally behind this this urgency that you're bringing to this issue. That common sense is underrated in the space of finance.
Life is not black and white. What's crazy is that they actually knew about the issue with relating to USDE, and they talked about it publicly. They stated, like, we've identified that our internal price oracle on this thing is problematic, and on this date we're going to fix it. And just a handful of days before that date, someone took advantage of it. So they kind of shone a light on it before, which is a weird choice in retrospect. So it seems like it was an attack of some sort, where somebody took a large amount of USDC or USDE and then crushed it on the exchange. It was being used for margin, so all those margin accounts lost value, got liquidated, and all the things they were long got liquidated. Market makers were like, what the fuck? They backed off, the books thinned out, and we have Armageddon 2.0 for a brief moment.
This is where the legal system might
like, what
intervene.
Yeah.
And a judge might say, like, I understand that your systems were functioning correctly, but let's be honest, this is not okay. Because of common sense. Which I think then is what GenLayer is trying to attempting to make into a systematic.
So you can think GenLayer as a digital judge, but instead of, it's more like a digital court system, right? There's a lot of different judges. Everyone is a different validator with stake behind and connected to a different AI model. So if you think about decentralizing AI, right? What does it mean to decentralize AI? You can decentralize the training, you can decentralize the inference, yes, but I don't think that that's enough, right? If you have a single model, even if that model has been trained through decentralized inference or different decentralized trading or run on decentralized inference, it's still a single model, right? And when you have a single model, that model will have some biases, right? As a human would, yes? So what we're doing is we're basically decentralizing the decision-making through essentially getting the outputs from different LLMs, each one of them with a different, biases, so that you kind of like the wisdom of the crowds, right? So essentially you get a better result because you're mixing the biases of different LLMs in a single response, right? So it's another layer to decentralizing AI. And at the end of the day, AI is making decisions, right? Those decisions could be because you want a DAO that needs to do some restitution, right? Or because you want to have a stable coin that wants to change, let's say, wants to rebase based on what's happening on the real world, but what's happening on the real world is complex. Yes? You could just say, every time that Powell goes out, I want the LLMs to agree on the rebase that they should be doing. For example, yes, the interest rate, for example. You could do that here. Yes? Now, the current state of LLMs, it would be probably not good enough because the LLMs are not smart enough. But what will happen with GenLayer is that as time goes by, as these LLMs get better, the whole network will become smarter too, right? So it's like a global entity that makes decisions with essentially the shared knowledge of all these different LLMs that these validators are running, and essentially is making decisions in a trustless manner, right? And that's important because there's a lot of moments where you don't want anyone to make a decision, right? Or where you don't want, because you don't want to trust anyone to make a decision, or because, liability-wise, you don't want to make a decision yourself, all right? Which is actually the idea, for example, behind an AMM, right? Like how, probably, Uniswap doesn't want to be in the middle there, right? It's using the protocol in order to not have that position of being, the central party dealing with the trades because of a liability perspective. Yes. Yeah. If they were responsible for those trades, that would be a problem for them. They would be getting sued every day, right? Oh, I can sue you. Yes. Understand?
Yeah. You can't sue a protocol. You can sue a company.
That's the thing. So decentralization matters. It enables new types of primitives, right? GenLayer will enable new types of primitives that right now just cannot exist because right now we're just limited to isolated smart contracts that can only deal with code. The moment that you have smart contracts that can natively go out to the internet to fetch some information, download it, even if it's an image, and then understand that information, run it if it's code, understanding its natural language, it can even write code and execute it on the fly before making a decision, right? If you have this trustless decision making that is doing it very quickly and very cheap, it essentially enables new types of decentralized primitives that right now we don't have at all, right? And so that's why we're building GenLayer, right? Which is like, we want to build these new types of primitives. We will enable these new types of primitives that right now, by the current architectures until now, were just impossible, right?
The merger of crypto and AI rolled into one.
To me, like that is the real one. Like I don't see that. Like there's everybody trying to focus on doing AI the crypto way, right? Oh, let's do ZK proofs of the AI inference, right? Oh, let's do different type of incentive mechanisms for AI, right? Training, for example, right? But this is different. This is using AI to enable new crypto primitives, and like I think like Diff AI, for example, to me that is using AI for crypto. But apart from that, I haven't really seen any. Like I would almost say none, apart from Diff AI, like the agentic, trading and so on. So
automation, yeah.
That to me is AI for crypto. But the thing is, on GenLayer, pretty much everything that you build on top of it is going to be AI for crypto, like new primitives that you can do for new type of applications. Yeah,
I think this is the right approach. I mean, unless I terribly misunderstand the horizon of possibility in computer science, I don't really think you can prove that an inference from an AI is valid. It's not exactly objective to begin with. If I had an AI tasked with generating a video of Will Smith eating pasta, it's not as simple as just a mathematical proof that, yes, that is Will Smith actually eating pasta. Not to mention that the AI could generate 10,000 of them, and which one's the real one? These are inferences. These are subjective. So what I'm hearing is that the incentive to be correct is based on reputation in GenLayer.
No. So on GenLayer, it's a money game, right? So it's a proof of stake system, a delegated proof of stake system. You have to have a stake in order to run a validator, right, and get selected. And then every time that there's a vote, right, if you are on the winning side, you make money. If you're in the losing side, you lose money, right? So this is through a commit and reveal system, right? So let's say, for example, that you want to, there's a prediction market, right? Like I think you went into the stablecoin, which I think obviously makes a lot of sense, but I think it's a bit more complex, right? I think a very simple example to understand is resolution of a prediction market. Yes. In order to resolve a prediction market right now, if you're using something like UMA, it's humans that pay $5 each one of them in order to actually vote something. They have their biases. They may even have their position as well on the prediction market, right? So it is complex, right? What's happening here is that you want to resolve the market. You go into GenLayer, say, for example, through layer 0. So the architecture is there's the GenLayer chain. That is the banking system, right? That's powered by ZK Sync. So it's a ZK stack L2. That's the chain. And then on top of this, there's one or more judiciaries, which is essentially the judiciary, right? Like this decision-making protocol, right? Here's where you have 1,000 validators, each one of them connected to a different AI model. So the prediction markets go through layer 0 into GenLayer. Then the GenLayer consensus essentially selects those 5 validators, and then they have to vote, right? There's a gas that they need to pay in order to execute this. So, you're using the resolution of the market is paying for this gas, but then it's going to be about, if you're on the winning side or not for that. Each one of those 5 validators will go to fetch the information on the internet, will come back, will vote, and they will try to agree through a commit and reveal system so that basically they don't have the incentive is to be on the winning side. But the winning side is going to be tricky for you to lie, because if somebody appeals and brings more validators, right? If you have 1,000 nodes voting on something and 50% have agreed on something and you're in the losing side, you'll be losing money there, right? Does it make sense? So it's not a repetition; it's a money game.
Right. Where the money is doled out at the resolution based on a voting process, where you have many different AIs. They're all independently developed and tuned, and they're all looking at a problem from their own perspective and come to a decision on it. Given that, the most famous problem with Bitcoin is the 51% attack, and with different there's always an attack vector. There's always a way to have a hostile takeover, and it can be financially infeasible. Of course, if there were the takeover, you could still roll back the chain in some cases, and here comes common sense again. That this is clearly
in this case, it's not as because in here what's happening is that the chain is a separate layer, right? So there's two layers, right? There's the banking system and the judiciary, which is an overlay, right? So the two networks in a way, right? And so to answer your underlying question, right?
Yes.
Let's say that it depends on the actual question being asked. If it's a question that it's very deterministic, right? That everybody would agree, right? It's one type of, attack vector, let's say. In that case would be something like 50%, right? So you need to have a trust assumption of 50% because basically it's a majority vote. So if you have 1,000 validators and the majority of them voted one thing, yes, it basically doesn't depend on the stake. They all have they'll have the same vote, yes. So if you appeal 7 times, you're going to basically the entire validator set. It doesn't matter, but it depends on the complexity, let's say, on the correctness of the question, right? On how well the different LLMs in average can resolve the question.
I was wondering about this with relating to like the complexity of the contract. You said it could be written in natural language.
Yes.
And I imagine early on there'll be a bit of an art form, like writing a good contract versus writing something that's kind of vague and hard to determine. What do you have in mind for that, where somebody like me could show up and be like, I'm going to create an intelligent contract? Like do you have guardrails, or is there like an AI agent that kind of supports the creation, or like knocks out bad contracts? Or
so I mean, writing a contract is always complex, right? Because you always ask for other people to come and use something, so it needs to be really, really well defined, right? We've done a bunch of things. We did this thing called Intelligent Oracle, which is essentially an agent that helps you craft an oracle for anything. So you just go to these different websites, see if 3 of them actually agree that this thing happened, and then these are the options. This is the date from the date to the date, and then just resolve that, right? And this is natural language. You're just on an agent telling it, but it essentially transforms it into a JSON that you're uploading into a contract that essentially deploys that specific oracle, right?
Okay.
When you're looking into natural language only, well, it's basically a wrapper. So you have a Python contract that just runs something in natural language and that does something, yes? And so you can literally do anything there. Like, for example, you can imagine a prediction market where you're just trying to vote, is there a God or not? So people can essentially add information to it, and the AI needs to decide whether there's a God or not. What is the correctness of that? Like how sure do you think the LLMs are to answer? How correct are they going to be answering whether there is or not? Yes. Yeah. Is that a 50%? Less than 50%?
Now I'm going to go ask ChatGPT. I'm curious.
A concrete example to use as a hobby horse. Uma had that fiasco not that long ago, which was whether Zelensky was going to wear a suit.
The suit. Is that a suit or not? The suit.
Is that a suit or not?
Yeah.
So is that an application for GenLayer, that you could get the humans out of the Uma loop? Yeah.
So the thing here is well, is that a suit, right? Like if you ask an AI, let's say what percentage of correctness that a human will tell you that that's a suit or not. Let's imagine for the example's sake that it's the same. Let's say 75%, right? So a human 75% correct on whether that's a suit or not. An LLM also 75% correct on whether that's a suit or not. Yes? The moment that you start to bring more, there's this thing called the Condorcet jury theorem, right? Which is basically this wisdom of the crowd things, right? So if one judge is 75% correct, but then I think it's 5 judges is something like 87% correct, and then 47 judges is something like 100. It doesn't make much more sense to ask more than 47 judges if in average they're 75% correct, right? and that's kind of going back to your previous question, Sid, right? Which is, well, the trust assumptions depend on the complexity of the specific question that you're asking, right? Because if they're 75% correct and the majority, like let's say, and 49% are dishonest, okay, then, well, the other ones that are honest could also be wrong. There's no difference between wrong and dishonest. You see?
That's right.
Okay. At that level, yeah.
So I guess like TLDR, you need to try to make contracts that are as correct as possible, right? And something that I think is fundamental to understand here is that while smart contracts can only deal with 100% correct, yes, and actually most of the ZK proof systems with AI also can only deal with 100% correct, because if not, they will get prompt injected. GenLayer can deal with 95% correct, 90% correct, even less than that. Of course, the more fuzzy the contract is, the more uncertain the contract is, the question is, right? The less you should be trusting it, because would you be trusting, a bunch of judges, human judges, to tell you whether God exists or not, right? Or even whether that's a suit or not. Yes. So part of it is very much on the question rather than the actual infrastructure, right? What you have is a system that makes trustless decisions at scale, super cheap. And if you want to move money, just make that, like the trust assumption needs to be good enough, right? So basically, you can ask it to do something that is like 90% correct, and I'm sure it will work absolutely great, right? If you go with something 75 or less, it's going to be a problem.
We moved through the economic disincentives to either be wrong or dishonest. Who can tell the difference? But I'd like to take another run at that. How does the system adapt to rogue judiciary bodies that just want to say it's not a suit? I think it was a suit. But what if there were a takeover of these agents, these judges that are making bad calls? You were saying that if they're not members of the wisdom of the majority, they don't get the payout. So they're incentivized. Their disincentive is just that, of being on the wrong side.
Well, they're paying. So basically, they're being quotes slashed a negative fee. Yeah. Right, but it's not a massive slash. It's basically, you can think about it like, okay, this is like constant, right? So like this is very, very quick decision making, very, very cheap. But basically, let's say that they will be getting paid 20 cents, and instead of getting paid 20 cents, they will actually be paying themselves 20 cents because they were on the losing side, right?
Yeah. So like a slashing reward dichotomy between. Yeah, that's interesting. The fuzzy contracts makes a lot of sense now when you mention it. When you first said fuzzy contracts, I was like, okay, that sounds vague, but it makes sense in the context of the real world. Like you could run a similar court case, and they do this before, where the case gets tossed and then a new judge sees it. But in theory, you could probably take certain things to trial and have different judges, different conversations, different juries, and you would have various outcomes. In some cases, it's pretty, slam dunk case, but this is really interesting. You've kind of achieved that same outcome spread, which really is what you need when you have fuzzy contracts.
I mean, you can make it as you want, right? Like you can do that. There's a transaction, and that will have its appeal mechanism and the finality window and everything. You can still, after the finality window, you can still have another appeal system underneath that basically even goes to humans. You can perfectly do that, right? Like, okay, you still disagree after the finality. So after finality, you still have 24 hours, let's say, and somebody can appeal and take it to UMA then if they want to, right? You can absolutely do that, right? But at least you have a system that gives you resolution of contracts super fast and super cheap, right? For these fancy contracts, for these, much more, open-ended type of contracts. And I think that's, I mean, in a moment where we talk about rally, I think that will make a lot of sense.
You read my mind. The segue here is important. We're getting up to near the top of the hour, but I really want to touch on Rally today. We've just launched a Rally campaign. It's the first project building on top of GenLayer. So it's not just theory now. You've got something built. It's running. Tell us about Rally and the first major use case for GenLayer.
So to me, this is super exciting because we've been working on GenLayer for 2 years now, and so like it's just it's been a long way. at the end of the day, like, I think what's important to see is like, look, GenLayer is such a difficult thing to convey and to understand, right? I remember when I started into Ethereum, I was like, okay, mind blown completely. Like, what can I do with this thing, right? So for me, like GenLayer, it like, I feel like still it takes some time for people to understand, and I'm very happy to see that there has been a use case built on top of it that is such an easy thing to understand, right? So what Rally is essentially this decentralized marketing protocol, right? So as I said before, we're trying to build a platform to enable new primitives, right? New permissionless, new trustless, decentralized primitives, right? And so, well, what you can do with these fuzzy contracts is essentially enable some sort of like, coordination mechanism between creators, so that basically, you go to base, you create a contract, you create a Rally contract, right? You deploy it there, you put in $100,000, and then you define the rules of a marketing campaign. I want people to be talking about Nirvana, about specifically this mechanism in these specific guidelines and rules and so on. And then those rules, that spec, get embedded into the contract by connecting it to GenLayer. And then what happens is that anyone in the planet can come in, can tweet something, and can send the tweet into the contract to then be evaluated, right? So, Colin, you tweet something, you paste the tweet, then the system basically sends it to GenLayer. The different validators download your tweet. They look, okay, is this tweet valid? Is it correct, right? Is it following the rules?
Does it match, the requirements?
Yeah. If you copy someone else's tweet, it can even do that, right? And then it's looking at a bunch of different parameters, like how much engagement did it get? Like, who did reply to your tweet? Is it, good people, or like, do they look like bots? Yeah. So trying to understand.
Can it detect bots?
Well, as good as an LLM can detect bots,
or account quality, right? Yeah, because I found a site that does dig into your followers, and it can determine like, this account is mostly like Fugazi, this account is legit, and this account has tons of engagement. Does it do that?
It can, right? The thing is just like, I mean, like, being honest, like, this is still, very early, right? So like, it's still in alpha. Like, there's lots on the GenLayer side of things. We're like working to make it scale, which is, there's a lot there. But really, like, the intelligent contract for Rally itself, right? There's like 20 different parameters that it's looking at. So like, how well do the LLMs right now understand whether this specific account is, is actually just another bot or not? Like, all these type of things. But that's the idea. The idea is basically to have a system that can, as intelligently as an LLM right now can do, read that and say, okay, I think that this is bullshit, or I think that this is just a bot, right? So like, low value, and then it's just scoring it, right? So it's saying, okay, the tweet that I just downloaded, the different validators have agreed that to give it a score of 330. Yes. So that's the score that this tweet basically got. And what happens is that everybody can participate. Now you're getting 200. Now you're getting 100. And then at the end of the period, this can be a week or a day or whatever, yes, then the system basically allocates the funds. So now those $100,000 get distributed between the people that had participated, depending on their scores.
The highest quality content gets the most reward.
Exactly. Highest quality or highest engagement, right? So basically, you can define that when you create a campaign, right? You create a campaign and you can define like 20 different parameters, right? Maybe you care more about engagement. Maybe you care more about the quality, right? And it's kind of interesting because like, it really enables things like, you can have a meme coin where you say, okay, 20% of the supply of the meme coin will go to the community for talking about the meme coin over 3 months, right? And just like, you don't need to do anything. Like the community will be essentially every day competing with each other. Yes. And like, whoever writes the best, tweets about the specific meme coin that day will be getting more or less. You see?
Yeah.
So it's just the interesting thing here is like, it's totally hands off. So like, now if you're a KOL manager, or you want to do a campaign with your community, right? You have 10,000 people in the community. You want to do a campaign with them. You just say, hey guys, you now can participate. Here's a pot. This is the tokens, right? And now these are the rules of the campaign. Anybody can come in and sign the contract, essentially, like, be the counterparty to this, and basically, compete to get this spot based on the quality, based on the engagement. And that's something that right now you couldn't do anywhere else, right? Because like the infrastructure to do this in a way that is self-enforcing. So no human in the loop, right? No, like, just it's automated completely, right? But you need AIs to be looking at them and understanding them and making the trustless decisions in order to, you get 5 and you get 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So the obvious competitor here would be Kaito. That was kind of the first one that made this stuff. And I was so behind the curve on that. Everyone was talking about yaps, and I'm just like, what's going on over there? And I checked him out. It was pretty expensive API to connect for a leaderboard, prohibitively so for a lot of projects. How do you guys improve on that? Obviously, there's some underlying competition there where there'll be two options if you want to get rewarded to talk about projects. Where do you see like the major edge? I mean, hands off, I think, is the big one, but maybe you could speak to that a bit.
I think that it's a fundamentally different thing, right? Now, Cato has a lot of different aspects of it, right? So has the analytics aspect of it, has the launchpad aspect of it, has the leaderboard aspect of it, right? So like there's a lot of things to Cato. What Rally is essentially this automated contracting system, right? And so the granularity that it's allowing you to have, it's something that Kaito doesn't give you, for example, right? So you can say, I want people to be talking about this specific thing in this specific approach, and it's going to be reading every single one of the tweets, 10,000 tweets, it will read each one of them to give you an assessment and to give it a score and to then give the distribution, right? And that's quite interesting as well, because like, for example, for KOL agencies, they can monetize this while it's very hard for them to monetize Kaito, right? Mm-hmm. Or for bigger KOLs, it's actually pretty hard to monetize Kaito because it's basically based on airdrops, right? So like kind of hard to actually get a big payout. But here what's happening is that you have a specific contract. Hey, I participate here, I'll be able to get this much tokens, right? For any token. And I think that part of the price tag is because they have a centralized infrastructure that's doing all the analytics, which is a huge heavy lift, right?
Yeah.
This is not something that Rally does, right? What Rally does, so there's like the top of the funnel, this wait list that basically allows, like Nirvana has the wait list, right? What this gives Nirvana is essentially all the data of its network, right? And the community of the community, so that then you can create targeted campaigns for them or for other people, right? So then you can basically create a campaign that just goes to the Nirvana community or the people that are with the Nirvana community, because you get essentially a graph with all of them, right? But in terms of analytics, that's basically it, right? What it's giving you then is the capability of very, very simply, like in 10 minutes, just create a campaign for any one of the targets, right? You can say these people specifically, like, big KOLs or small KOLs, or like, people in the Nirvana that have, an influencer score of, more than 3,000, whatever, right? You define that, and then you launch a campaign for them, and basically it's just completely hands off, right? And then I think here is like, it's not a black box. So the thing with, the competitors is that they are black boxes. Here, it's totally on chain. You can see, okay, this person got this many tokens because of this score, which was voted by these validators and got this specific score.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I feel like that would work really well for ambassador programs. Projects that are saying, hey, we're going to put up this many tokens. We have a lot of ambassadors. We'd like them to get paid, but we also want them to like complete quality work. And this automates that.
Yes, I think future of work, and to me that is it, right? It is a very interesting aspect. For example, you can also do it for bug bounties, right? So now, okay, you find the bug in an open source system. Now you don't need to go ask for people to pay arguments and so on. No, the AIs will evaluate whether you should be getting paid or not, and whether the bug that you just found is a critical or a low level, low issue, right?
You could put up the bug bounties and then decide who's going to get them. I love that.
Exactly, like just totally hands off, right? So again, it's about like not having to make some decisions that are maybe tricky or that you just wouldn't be really transparent or fair, right? Like I think like we live in a world that trust is really breaking apart. I really feel like that. I mean, I'm living in Spain and things are pretty dire here in terms of trust with the system. I think that I see that the future is going to be filled with AIs, and we need a kind of like legal system for them to operate, right? This is not legal tech. This is just blockchain, right? But it's a type of blockchain that allows anybody to create very complex contracts and then essentially get them resolved, right? So it can be this future of work type of thing. It can be a DAO that is an investment DAO that decides what to put the money on it or not. Like some people are working on that. It can be different type of like games, like like Freza, similar to Freza. We've got this team called Unstoppable, and basically they're doing like a Freza framework where basically you just deploy a game and then there's a pot and people are fighting to get the pot, right? Or yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be tons of designs as well for stablecoins.
It strikes me as something that'll scale really well with AI too, because it's the validators themselves that decide which LLM they're going to use, right? And so as LLMs improve and they all get better, your system just improves with it automatically. You don't have to go out. You're not maintaining LLMs or anything like that. It's completely.
To me, it's I don't know that even I fully understand what this will imply, right? But it's crazy to think that you will have a blockchain that will become smarter with time. Yeah. And what I'm saying, like, because like we still call it sometimes like the intelligent blockchain, right? And it feels like cringe, right? Because like, okay, it's like, yes, why do you need an intelligent blockchain? But it really is like, it is a blockchain that makes intelligent decisions, right? And so like it will become smarter over time as the LLMs become smarter, and they will be able to do more things. Like you will have applications that right now, let's say this correctness, that what I was saying before about the, how correct the question, right? How difficult the question, right? These will become, many more things will become possible, right? For example, you can make a contract, write code, and execute the code on the fly. Today, that will work worse than 10 years from now. 10 years from now, it will be able to create insane code to run every single time that it's being called. You see what I mean? Yeah. So, like
how to evolve.
Yeah.
It's like the DAO wants to make a decision on what to invest in. Okay, I want you to essentially write a discounted cash flow calculator, right? Write it, like code it, and then run it, right? Today, that would not be working well, right? I bet in the future that's going to be working really well, and then you will have a system that will be doing the DCF on any proposal to see which one has the best ROI. Today, that will not work, I can tell you, right? But like,
that's dope.
Give it enough time.
Yeah, that's exciting. I mean, you basically just tack on the blockchain to this like exponential growth of AI, and it just gets insanely smart with time automatically. That's brilliant, dude.
It's gonna be fun. It's really cool.
I'm really glad you came on today to talk about it all. We've got just past the top of the hour. We did it. We're within time, and I'm looking forward to hearing the next phases. We've just launched our rally campaign for Nirvana. So anyone watching this, if you haven't already, you can go to our waitlist and sign up. You can join Rally. It's kind of limited right now, right? Like you're not just letting everybody in. So getting through on project waitlists is a nice little fast track. So if anyone wants to check that out, if you're a content creator, etc., do so please. And any final thoughts from anyone before we wrap?
No,
catchphrases, anything, Okay. All right, guys, everybody, have a nice day. Thanks for joining us. And we'll see you in a couple weeks on the next show. Cheers.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Albert.